can. Vicky, I see your name. Can you hear us?
She's still entering. There she is.
There we are. All right.
Wow.
Good deal. Okay, so this is the meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council for February 22nd, 2021, George Washington's birthday and Cecil Poss's birthday as well. We will start with a Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody's ready for that. We've got our flag. There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have a moment of silence, but very short one since we've had a lot of moments getting started late. So a brief moment of silence. Okay. Can we do the roll call now, Carol?
Certainly. Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Here.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Here. Okay, I understand we don't have any minutes to approve, so we will go right to citizens' opportunity to address council. Is there anybody that is interested in talking to us?
We did not have anyone request to speak.
Okay. Before we get into the rest of the things, we did receive an email saying that the governor intends to extend the order allowing for online meetings, but we don't, as far as I know, have that order yet. So I think if for at least right now, if that order extends to our next meeting or through our next meeting date, I think it would be a good idea for us to go ahead and do that meeting online, and then we'll see where we stand at that point. Is everybody in agreement on that? Okay, so at least the next meeting will be via Zoom, and then we'll talk about what the order says and where we go from there. Okay, let's go straight to the resolutions. Is my volume okay if I'm yelling like this?
It's
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, the first resolution is a resolution authorizing the fire chief to submit an application for an assistance to firefighters grant through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Any discussion about that from anyone?
I would note for the record that this is a 95% grant. We have just a 5% match. And this is equipment that we generally would be purchasing anyway. We will do so in a kind of a larger batch with this, but it is a 95% grant.
How often do we replace the coats and pants normally?
I'm not sure what the normal cycle is, but it's dependent on use and wear. But we also are in a position where we need, each firefighter really needs two sets, because if one is contaminated, there's a decontamination process, and they have to have something else to wear. We also have issues. This is one of the things that can be affected when we have turnover, because the gear is person specific. Sometimes it will work for new hires and sometimes it won't. So it really varies how much we have to buy during any particular period.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this or any other comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Do we have a
Second.
Okay. let's go ahead and vote.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. All right, the next, let me get my agenda. All right, the next item resolution is a resolution authorizing the fire chief to submit an application for a fire prevention and safety grant through the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Fire Prevention and Safety Grant Program. Is that the same thing?
No, sir.
Okay, tell us about this one, Boyd.
This one is more of an enhancement program. It's one of the things that is within the scope of the fire department's responsibility is public education, fire prevention, and so forth. And this grant would enable the department to purchase a fire extinguisher simulator, provide instructor training for using that, and also provide some salary backfill so that when firefighters are teaching classes, we can have someone fill their shift. So it covers all of that. Our fire safety and public education program is something that we've worked to enhance over the last several years, and this will be another opportunity to do this. This is also a 95% grant.
Sorry.
Have any other comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we'll have a vote.
Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Moving on, the next resolution is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement with the Electric Power Board of Chattanooga in the amount of $17,221.57 for installation of underground electrical service for the LPRF grant project at Marion and Driver Fields.
The LPRF grant for Marion and Driver requires that all electrical service be placed underground, anything that's over the footprint of the actual grant project. And this will accomplish that. From the point of service, the contract covers having it taken to the light poles and such, but this portion being the actual taking the service to the area underground has to be done by EPB. We did look to see if there was potential for any savings just for the trench work and stuff like that. Seeing that this contract is a lump sum, all-inclusive, and does not have any type of a rock clause or anything, it became very evident that this all the way around was the best way to go. So putting the underground service in EPB is a sole source. And we did look at splitting this up. Sam took some time and looked at different options, and all in all, EPB will definitely be the best scenario.
Boyd, does this, since it's not part of the granted part, is this going to be a rec budget item, or is it going to be a maintenance item?
So this is part of the grant project. It's just not included in the contract with baseline. This had to be handled separately. So it is reimbursable as a grant expense.
Oh, so we can submit it. It's just not in the original. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any more discussion? We'll have the vote.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Okay, next resolution, a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a memorandum of agreement between the town of Signal Mountain and the principal agents of the Mountain Library Foundation pertaining to the donation of funds to the town of Signal Mountain and the dedication of said funds for the expansion of the Signal Mountain Library. So basically, this is allowing us to get the funds to pay for the project because we have to pay for the project, correct?
Correct. This is really, the two main points are that they will donate the funds to the town, and the town is ensuring that those funds will be used for this project. And even if there are any funds left over, we will confer with them and either return leftover funds or spend it otherwise for the improvement of the library. So it protects, I think, them and us.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion or comments or questions? We have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we can have a vote on this.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Next resolution, a resolution authorizing the town manager for the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee to award a contract to J&J Contractors Incorporated in the amount of $759,800 as the lowest responsible bid for the construction of an addition to the Signal Mountain Library, including all work detailed in the project specifications and engineered plans.
So this is,
Does anybody have any questions or comments about this resolution?
so this was, the library board reunited last week and went back over both sets of information and determined that they wanted to move forward with J&J. So
All right, they make a recommendation to us. We still have to follow the ordinance. And Harry, you might want to just advise us what our obligation is in this.
Well, your obligation is to make an informed decision. I think should you decide to go with J&J, I think that is a defensible position because the architect on the job has now given a reasonable, rational basis for their belief that the true low bidder may not be able to complete the job within the time specified. And that is one of the conditions that the town council can consider in making this decision under Title 5, 409, I believe.
So
It's Title 5, Chapter 4, Section 409. Somebody had a comment?
do we have a copy of that opinion from the architect?
It's in the packet. I don't have a page number, I don't think, but I can.
page
Yeah,
23.
this stuff about the elevator. Okay,
Ah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just, to me, it felt like it was clarified that elevator order times are not part of the definition of 112 days or whatever it was that the lowest bidder had submitted. And then they're using that as the explanation, the primary reason that they're saying that the bid's not qualified. And it seems like they don't understand what the time frame that the builder's referencing is.
Let me ask you a question. Are you saying the library board, or are you talking about the company that presented the bid?
I'm talking about that's the primary reason cited by the architect,
Okay.
as well as I watched the library board meeting. It was the primary consideration that Mr. Reynolds cited, as well as others. And I mean, looking at this language in our code, makes me a little queasy to say they're not responsible and they cannot perform the contract in the time that they specified, when clearly they talked about the time specified being boots on the ground, not the time it takes to order an elevator, which is the pretty much primary reason cited here. I would hope we would see some kind of evidence of prior jobs not being completed correctly or something of that sort as evidence, rather than misunderstanding around time frames.
I think there's a little concern of confidence with a bid that appeared to be clear and a time frame that on its face appeared to be.
See where there's several parts of the ordinance highlighted that's talking about this, and then there's explanation as well based on that from the head of the library board. So he shares that it is about lead times for the elevator, although they did say boots on the ground at this time, that they feel like there is not a whole lot of security in when the other company can do that. And so that's why they went with the other company.
Yeah.
So they said whether they can perform the contract or provide the service promptly. And that is something that they had a concern over.
I would add, if we were talking about $100,000, $200,000 difference, that would be one thing, but these are
Yeah,
close.
but Dan, that is not the standard we're held to, unfortunately. I totally agree. Like, I think their process for that, and it's their money. That's what's this weird situation we have. And I feel like they're making the best decision they feel that they should be able to make, which is, and they've done it right. Like, if you have a small concern about a misunderstanding, you can do that, but we're held to the standard, unfortunately. Lowest responsible bidder submitting a bid.
Well, responsible is a subjective word.
I think if Harry
Yeah,
feels
but
like we're in a defensible position to award the contract to the company that the library board has selected, that we need to honor their wishes.
mhm.
Courts are very reluctant to set aside a decision by a municipal board. There's even a case that unfortunately I was involved in where we won at the trial level, but the Court of Appeals reversed it and said there was a debated reason for what was done. And it doesn't have to be a good reason, as long as it's fairly debated. So I think either choice would be defensible.
Okay.
So in the area that says acceptance of proposals, it does say that we have the right to reject any and all. So, or to waive any informality in the proposal. So I feel like what I know is that in participating in the library board and watching them, it was a very thoughtful decision, and it was not made hastily. And
Oh, I know it wasn't made hastily.
be,
I'm just saying it's not the same standard as if you wanted to just pick who you want. It's a legal standard, unfortunately, that we are held to. They're held to. They're not held to it really. They read it. They didn't really discuss these standards honestly that much in I think a 10-minute, 14-minute meeting this second go around.
I think they didn't discuss the standards in the first meeting. They were made aware of the standards and hopefully were briefed on the standards in the second meeting. But in the first meeting, there was a lot of debate and discussion about the time that these two contractors had provided for completing the project. And to me, I think that both of the contractors do nice work. I think that when I think about what might have happened is we have an elevator situation, and perhaps Wineset, whose primary work is building single level structures like convenience stores and restaurants and strip malls, might not be as familiar with the elevator company and their requirements and the time. They just didn't allot enough time for an elevator project.
Charlie, that's not true. The bid asked for, I forget the exact terminology, but their typical interpretation of that would have been notice to proceed, so we can proceed on the project. You do all of your ordering and everything before that. So they defined it as notice to proceed, meaning we're going to do our homework and have all this stuff ordered. And, we wouldn't be proceeding if we didn't have all the materials we need to disrupt your operation for the smallest amount of time possible.
Well, even the letter that
So to me, it's just
even the letter that Mr. Hollingsworth, is that correct? Wrote added an additional 6 weeks for that notice to proceed time period, but even that wasn't sufficient time to complete the elevator project. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of lost confidence, at least in my opinion, with the capacity to complete the project. And it doesn't appear that they can complete it timely.
Yeah.
I think they do nice work for what they do.
I'm just gonna say on this, I don't have to, and there's no reason I should, but I will recuse myself. We do work with Wineset. I know that it's good work. But I'm going to recuse myself. Were I to be voting on this as I could, I would be voting no by this standard. I don't think it's, to me, lowest responsible. And then reading through all of these points, I mean, again, I hate it because I think that they should be able to choose who they want with their money. And it's not really, while the taxpayers have risk that we need to be concerned about, it's not, it's not taxpayer money as long as there's no overages or anything. But by those standards, I just don't see it.
Well,
we're giving in favor that one of them interpreted it one way and the other interpreted it a different way, and we're basing the assumption that J&J interpreted it correctly. Maybe they did, but definitions I've seen would suggest otherwise.
Like to move to approve.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion or questions? All right, let's go ahead and have a vote.
Well,
Hold on.
Andrew, I just want you to know, I mean, I hear your argument and I see that. I mean, this is one of those things when you have multiple people bid on something and they're close, a decision gets made, and it is a subjective decision. And we're not voting on whether or not they made the right subjective decision. We're voting on whether which builder we want to build. If the taxpayer concern that you have, if Charlie was going, excuse me, if Harry was saying, be careful, that would, that does become a taxpayer issue here. But I think the weight of the library board and who they choose, having thoughtfully met twice in order to make this decision, that's pretty heavy. Now, if there was something wrong, it would be our responsibility to say, no, there's something wrong. But there doesn't appear to be anything egregiously wrong, and they're awfully close to begin with, Andrew. So that's why I do hear you. I think your case is made well. And I appreciate, that, but that's why I think we should approve this and move on. And I hate that, we aren't in the business where we can say, well, give them something else to build, but it doesn't work that way.
Right. They're both fine companies, I'm sure. But one of them has to get the bid. So do we have any other comments or questions? All right, we can go ahead and vote. And Andrew, as I understand it, is recusing himself because of a business relationship, sort of. A small business relationship, I guess, with the.
I work for a business that uses them, just to clarify. We use them not out of friendship, but because they win our bids every time. but
Okay.
yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and vote. Carol?
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner is recused. Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is the second reading of the amendment to the ordinance regarding council member liaison. It would be amending sections 2-106 and 2-107 and creating a new section 2-108. Do we have a motion on that?
Well, you asked to bring something to the meeting, and I have that if you want to do that prior to this.
I think we're supposed to have a motion and a second and then a discussion, and we can discuss it during that period. Is that
Motion
I may have
to
done this
approve.
wrong the last time.
We didn't do this for the last. That was for the last 5 things we just approved. They should have been done that way too.
Well, we'll do this. A motion to approve, and we can discuss
Second,
if somebody seconds.
Who was the second?
me, Vicky Anderson.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about it. And we've had a lot of discussion. So Dan, if you have something new to provide, I will start off by saying we've had, not a ton, but we've had several citizens that have emailed, at least I think they've emailed everybody, asking that we approve this. I haven't received an email from anybody asking not to approve it, but there haven't been, dozens of people that have emailed it in any event.
I don't believe I've been emailed, but
I didn't check to see who was on the emails.
The emails that I've gotten, I was blind copied.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how to do
you
that,
can see
but
who
I
else
think
got
people do that where you can't see who else got it. In any event, Dan, we've had a lot of discussion. I think we know what your position is, but if you've got some new information, then
yes,
let's have that.
Well, it's not just new information. It's what you asked me to do.
Okay, let's go.
To bring to this meeting.
Okay.
So if you pull up, Sam, do you have Title 2, 2-1, 106?
Yes.
That you could show us? And this will only take me a minute, folks, because I think this is simple. Go down to 2-106.
It's there. Is it not?
Yeah, it's there. All right. So just I'll read there's the second sentence I want to focus on, but I'll read the first just to put us in place. Each board
Is
shall
this
provide.
sorry, Dan, to interrupt. Is this the, without reading it, this is what's currently there, correct?
Yes, this is chapter 1, boards and commission.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let me go back down to it here. It's easier to read. Each board shall, there's only 2 sentences in this section. Each board shall be provided staff support as needed as determined by the town manager and town council. The town council by majority vote shall appoint a council member as a representative or liaison to each board to facilitate communication between the board and the council. So it's the second sentence. It begins, and this is the center of what I've been saying from the beginning. The council representative shall participate in the work of the board. That is by design. That's what our municipal code says. When I brought this up, as you mentioned earlier, Charlie, that I was the one who originally said we need to look at this. I do think it needs to be adjusted, but we can do everything we want right here just by adding a few words to the sentence. The council representative shall participate in the work of the board, but shall not seek to direct or unduly influence the decision-making process of the board. We add that sentence. The other reason that I brought this up a year or 2 ago is that council members do need to more actively keep the town council informed of what's happening. The town council would often not know what's happening with the different boards because sometimes the council members weren't even attending or the boards weren't meeting, and the council member really should have been facilitating that to happen. So add to that, subsequent to each meeting, this would be the town council member, subsequent to each meeting shall report board activities to the full council and will assist in facilitating submission of the meeting minutes. Getting the meeting minutes to this, this is me speaking contemporaneously again, getting the meetings before the town council, before their next meeting would go a long way in having a well-informed, more informed council. And then of course we have to add the sentence we were going to add anyway. The council representative shall not be a working member except as, a voting member, except as required by superior law in the case of the planning commission and the library board. I think if you add those 2 changes, which is what you asked me to do, that's all we need to do. And if you have a liaison that is participating too much, all that someone has to do is say, we think you're attempting to unduly influence the decision-making process of the board, without shutting down what the intent of this section is, which is the council representative shall participate in the work of the board.
I think that the 2 sentences that you read are inconsistent, because I don't think you can be a liaison and participate in the work of the board. And I don't think that there was an intention to appoint town council members to be on boards to work as a, part of the board. I think the intention.
That's what it says. It says it. I mean, that sentence is easy to understand.
They're to facilitate communication between the board and council. That is a liaison's role, is to facilitate communication. Hey, bring this back to the council, bring this from the council to the board. That's facilitating communication. To me, that's what the liaison's role is. We ask for citizens to be in charge of these boards, and we need to let them do what they need to do and not insert our authority, I guess, over that board, whether it's express or implied. To me, I mean, this can be changed to be more clear to what we actually want, rather than this somewhat inconsistent statement.
Why do we want this, Charlie? Why do you want to change what's written? What I'm saying is not new. Our municipal code says the council representative shall participate in the work of the board. It says that. That's not new. That's what it says right now. The inconsistency is the new wording that we're trying to put in.
So
Go ahead.
We're not trying to fix a current problem, or what we're not trying to fix a current problem with a specific individual. Good processes, again, are not about people They're what virtuous people put in place in the event in the future you don't have such a virtuous person, in this case on the council as a liaison. So we're not, Dan, you keep bringing up, what are we trying to solve here, where it's not a specific person or issue, or best practices or best practices. And the reality is we are probably a little bit rare in that we have that sort of language that gives us as council members that much power as a liaison.
What do you base
And that
that
much
on,
leeway.
Andrew? What do you base that
we
statement
got-
on, Andrew?
I thought I got an email from a citizen that did a good amount of research and also compared it with MTAS suggestions of what should be in a liaison code. And it suggests a lot of this language.
And it's
And similarly sized towns have this kind of language when they have a lot of citizen boards like we do.
Mhm.
That's just, we're actually behind the times on this one as I see it. And that's what I hope we can fix.
Did you objectively research that yourself, or go with someone who was?
I read
researching
MTAS
towards a conclusion?
myself, as well
Mhm.
as at the beginning of this process, did my own research. Not as extensive as this citizen had done. And the ones that I did find similar size in Tennessee had language similar to this. This is not rare. Maybe we're a little bit harsher than some, and some of them you probably would really not like. But I realize it's going to be difficult for me. I'm passionate about rec, right, and I want to share my opinion on that. But thinking about it from a process standpoint and from us representing the citizens the best we can, my voice on rec matters will be heard when we vote on them in resolutions and ordinances. I don't need to be speaking out and inserting my opinion in those meetings. I need to be listening. And to me, it's about helping give us guidance on how to listen and what appropriate behavior is. And we're all, by the way, going to do that, I believe. We don't need this, but maybe in the future, the town council does. That's why it's best process.
Sure, but it's worked for a long time, and you can listen and still participate. And the intent of the ordinance is clear. The council representative shall participate. It's clear I'm in the minority. Someone can call the question on this and move on, but I'll state again, for the most part, we have new council members who do not have history participating in working boards. Working boards get stuff done. And sometimes there's a council perspective and there's an institutional knowledge that is super helpful for these boards. And they want participation and they want ownership. They want buy-in from the council members to help even advocate, once you get to the board level. And Andrew, you're great for that for rec. You ought to be involved in that.
But I don't see where this prevents what you're talking about.
It does.
Giving institutional knowledge and guidance is specifically called out as something you should be doing.
If you're asked to.
Scope of work.
No, you're allowed to. I mean, this language doesn't prevent you from talking at a meeting. And it used to say that you needed to be quiet until asked, but now it says you can talk when citizen participation is permitted. So, look,
but there is no citizen participation that's set up in these meetings. That doesn't exist.
Well, if it's an informal meeting, then you'll kind of go along with what the board does. But I mean, I think the difference of opinion that we have is when you have a working board, who should be working on it. Look, I just, while we're on the meeting, I just Googled what the definition of liaison is. A person who helps organizations or groups to work together and provide information to each other. You're not part of the group. You're facilitating two groups to work together or something like that. We're supposed to go in there and facilitate, but not participate to do, we ask these boards to participate and do their work. And, you know, it's a working board, and that's why we have 5, 6, 7, 11 members of the board, so they can work. And then when there's decisions that need to be made, they make a recommendation to the town council, we deliberate and decide, and the liaison brings the council's perspective to the board if the council wants the liaison to, and brings the board's perspective to the council if the board wants the liaison to.
But I want to be clear that you are asking us to do it differently from the way it's written. When you say you are not to participate, or whatever your words were, that's what it says. For the past 4 years as a council member, fulfilling my duty as a liaison, the council representative shall participate in the work of the board. And I think back to practical, I'm going to go back to, I'm sorry, because I'm not letting anybody down, but like with our bike ped path committee, that was one of those committees. We worked and we met and we discussed, and everyone had input, and there were council members who were involved with staff and with citizens and with MTAS. Those are working boards. You're writing something, so you could have a person who is the head of a working board or committee who doesn't allow participation, doesn't allow citizen participation. We are elected to represent the town of Signal Mountain. We have a fiduciary responsibility to what we do. We take that fiduciary responsibility with us every time we speak. We are speaking from that standpoint. We don't cease to be council members when we're liaisons. But again, it's kind of clear where this is going. I think this is a mistake for folks to do, in particular, like to jump right in and change something that has worked for a long time. If the problem, Andrew, I do think when I brought this a couple of years ago that it needs to be looked at, we were solving for a specific problem, because there was some concern that some boards were being wrangled, you know, in a particular direction. And if we just had the line in there that said, shall not seek to direct or unduly influence the decision-making process of the board, would have solved that. The chair of that board could say, this is what's happening. And again, this, I'll add, the other problem is the liaisons not fulfilling the part Harley's talking about, where you are facilitating communication. There's nothing in this that says what the liaison should do. And that's what needs to be changed. How the liaison should be helping and making the town council know what's going on.
Do we have any other discussion? Questions? Okay, let's have a vote on it.
I think you're muted, Carol.
I need a first and a second, please.
Oh, I thought we had, we had it.
I think we have that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are correct. I apologize. Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch.
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
No.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Right, the next item is discussion. I think we have some things that might take a little less time than others. Why don't we kind of get some of the, maybe the easier things out of the way first? Let's so go in a little different order. Opening of town facilities. Where do we stand on that?
At present, as we discussed last time, we are in a position to shift operations at Recycle back to the original configuration at any time. The only facility that's actually still closed completely to the public is Town Hall. And we're getting some materials so that we can make the counter space a little safer and some signage we can put up to limit one person at a time at the counter, and mark some spaces in the lobby to ensure social distancing as well. So in relatively short order, we can be in a position to open town hall. The lobbies to fire and police are open, but they are limiting individuals into the work area pretty strictly. Same thing for the public works. I believe the department heads and those responsible for those facilities should be able to continue that to the degree they feel necessary. But the lobbies are open and folks can do business there. The library will be a decision for the library board. So really the only facility that I think there's a real question about, we continue to have some concerns, would be the gym. And I would welcome any input on that. But as far as the functional, operational, departmental oriented facilities, they are either pretty much are or can be in short order open to the public.
I did get like with the liaison, I got a few comments from citizens, or I have gotten a few comments from citizens about the recycling center mainly. Some people want to open up things. I think there was one person who was concerned about reopening facilities, but just wanted it to be safe. I think we're ready to reopen the recycling center, and I'm assuming that there will be signs saying that you have to wear a mask. So let's see how that goes, as long as the numbers are looking good. And that's my opinion. And then I know there's a better word for the town, the dump, but that's what I call it. But is that open?
Transfer station.
Transfer station. Thank you, Susanna. I haven't been there in a long time, so I don't know if it's closed down or if it's open to the public, if there's any restrictions.
It has been open through the vast majority of the pandemic.
Dan probably lives over there with his remodeling project. So I guess it's, you wear a mask and you can go there and you don't have to limit. There's no restriction on going there other than wearing a mask.
Correct.
Okay.
The building as a whole, the Public Works facility is not open to the public, but the lobby is where the vast majority of the business takes place. And if we have meetings that we have to do in person, we've generally been using the council chambers so that we have just a handful of people in the largest space we have available. So that's worked. So they're doing business as usual. It's just the back office space that's not open to the public. Same with fire and police.
Okay. I mean, this is not like a thing we are voting on, but does anybody else have any comments about it?
I've received several phone calls from citizens requesting that we do go ahead and open up the recycle center specifically.
I haven't gotten feedback from anyone, but I'm good with opening
Okay.
the recycle center.
The gym, I can say that Jeb Barrett asked me about that. He's not a town resident, but he is in charge of the basketball league. I don't think the basketball league isn't happening now, right? It's a fall thing.
The season would have ended, I guess.
Yeah, but you know, I don't know how you would open up the gym. I would love to open up the gym. I can tell you that kids need to be active, and if we can, you know, make a gym available for them to be active in, that'd be great. I would suggest just seeing what maybe Chattanooga has done, or some other municipalities around us that have gyms, Soddy Daisy or Red Bank, and see if they've had any success or ideas that have or haven't worked, and maybe we can just follow their lead.
One concern I have in that regard, I agree. If we were only talking about relatively young kids, it wouldn't be as much of an issue. But especially in the evenings, the gym is used pretty heavily by adults for pickup basketball and everything. And we have generally teenage gym attendants that would be put in a position to try to enforce rules and protocols. And that's difficult enough without the complications of a pandemic.
Okay, well, can you have somebody maybe just check with, so like Red Bank or Soddy Daisy, some of those other towns around us, and see if they've been doing anything that works well in their town gyms? We don't have to reopen it now. We don't have to make a decision, but just kind of see what's going on with other municipalities. All right.
Skipped an agenda item, maybe.
I did. I skipped the municipal landscape ordinance because I think it'll be
Can-
lengthy. I thought we could get a few things out of the way that might not be as lengthy.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question before we move on from that?
Yeah.
When do we typically open the pool?
Memorial Day.
So we don't really need to.
No. We have begun advertising for lifeguards and all of that. We're proceeding in anticipation of being able to open.
Because that is one that I've heard from several citizens. Y'all are going to open the pool, right? And it's so, yeah, we're proceeding to plan like we will be able to.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hopefully we will. I think the recreation board membership might be a fairly quick discussion. So let's hit that, and then we can talk about the other two in whatever order we need to. But Boyd had mentioned something about the recreation board membership, so I'll let you take it.
Yeah, in the last meeting, council asked that I take a look at this and come back to this meeting with a recommendation. I think the desire was to figure out how to facilitate some rec league input and participation in the rec board, but there are also concerns about what type of influence that might have, especially if it was limited to a particular league. In looking at this, I think what I would recommend is changing the ordinance and basically designating one of the board positions as a league representative, and make that position rotate on 1-year terms as opposed to 3-year. In late November, early December, we are sending out notices to folks whose terms are expiring and getting applications and everything. So at that same period, or at that same time, we could facilitate a meeting of the various rec league presidents. They are not government organizations, so it doesn't have to be an open meeting or anything like that. We can just facilitate the meeting, have the presidents of the league come in and decide amongst themselves who will be their representative for the upcoming year. But if we have one spot that's for the leagues, they serve 1 year, you can't serve consecutive years, then whoever's representing the leagues this year would think would be motivated to do so inclusively, so as they would give the benefit of that the following year and so forth. So that, to me, I think it would be the best scenario to engage the leagues, do it fairly, make sure that they all have a turn at representation, but at the same time, they are representing the leagues as a group to the
I think
record.
I think somebody had mentioned, it was probably Andrew or Dan, like an ad hoc committee of the leagues, and then they have a representative, and that sounds like what you're talking about.
Well, this wouldn't require them to form an ad hoc committee. It would simply require them to meet annually and decide amongst themselves who would be their representative for the upcoming year. One of the things you can get into if you appoint someone for a 3-year term, they may not be the league president for those 3 years. So if they step down, then you would be in a position to have to replace them with someone else. So the 1-year cycle, they should pretty much know who the president for the upcoming year is going to be, and it would resolve that issue as well.
Okay. Any other comments about this?
That what Boyd described lines up with what I was suggesting last time.
Okay. I think we, you sent us an email, or maybe, yeah, I think you sent us an email just saying that there was, we had only had one, as it turns out, only one position open. That was filled at the last meeting. So right now there's not an opening position.
No, there is at the last meeting. I don't remember who. Someone said we had 2 existing openings.
Okay.
In fact, we only have 1. So
Okay, did we not vote on somebody last meeting?
no, not
think-
the last meeting.
We pushed it down the road wanting to see
Okay,
where this goes, if I recall. And I'm the one who mistakenly said 2.
okay, well, maybe on the next agenda, we can, or the next meeting, we can talk, I mean, we have an application out there for a, well, I guess we have 2 applications.
Well, but I
right?
think Charlie, what he's saying, if you fill that, you can't make this suggested change, then you'd have an odd number on a board, which typically you want to avoid.
Yeah, if we want to make this change or something similar, we would need to do an ordinance change ahead of filling that last position.
Okay,
That last position-
you want to have an odd number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
we
how
would
many
have
are on the
legal
board?
change if you added someone.
How many are on the board now?
That is
7, I think.
7, I believe. And at this moment, there are 6 and 1 opening.
Are you saying that this one opening that we have left would be filled with the position, the newly created position that you're recommending, Boyd? So we don't, okay,
Yeah,
So-
if we're gonna make that change, we need to leave this position open so that we have a position to appoint that person to.
okay, I think that makes a lot of good sense.
Or you expand to 9, which I just think, we already typically have trouble filling these.
Yeah,
Okay, well, this, I guess we'll need to have an ordinance change if we're gonna do this. Sounds like, there's a lot of people that want to do it, so somebody can put together a proposal.
I'll draft an ordinance for the changes and try ahead of the next meeting to reach out to the league presidents and have a discussion with them as well.
Okay,
So just thinking ahead on that front, I don't recall the name of the person whose application we received. But I know they had listed 2 or 3 boards at least. And if that's a direction we're thinking we want to go with that ordinance change, does anyone recall? I believe it was her
it's
second
Erin.
request.
I don't remember what her what her requests were. I know the rec board was one of them,
Yeah, okay.
but I
Maybe
believe
we-
that the only position that's left open right now is the rec board. Right. Okay, well, we'll have further discussion on it at another meeting. All right, now we have the municipal landscape ordinance and the overflow parking for Rainbow Lake. We can go ahead and if you want to go into the municipal landscape ordinance, we can do that now. The Rainbow Lake thing was a huge problem last summer. Probably is going now that if the weather starts getting nice, it will be soon again, but we can talk about the other thing first and then get into the Rainbow Lake.
And I just wanted to make you aware, we have 2 members of the tree board available in the waiting room if you all have any questions that you want to address to them about these proposed changes.
What page is in our packet? Does this start on? Can somebody quickly tell me?
Well, we don't have those page numbers on there, Susanna. Look
Yeah,
for
I'm just scrolling through my PDF.
look for wording that says 13-1, 13-2. It's Title 13, Property Maintenance Regulations.
Right after the ordinance that we
I've
just,
got it.
39, I think.
Yeah.
So
That's
just sorry, just as a general setup for this thing, on Chapter 2-3, 13-201, that's a pretty good setup for the reasons behind doing this. The establishment and purpose wording in there.
Can
Oh.
you say that again? What was it again?
Chapter 2, Municipal Landscape Ordinance, 13-201 is this one in purpose. And it says, so why we're doing this. There you go. It's right there on the page now. And I fully agree. One of the greatest assets of the town of Signal Mountain is its extensive resources of trees and landscaping. And the citizens recognize, and it goes through all, but I'd recommend people read it if you hadn't. It's up to town council. I guess the town council doesn't have to, but if you want to establish and demonstrate that your local environment is important to you, it makes sense to have a landscape ordinance that says, this is how we are going to present ourselves. Are we going to try to look like a golf course, or are we going to try to look like a wooded town? Or something in between? What kinds of rules do we want our municipality to follow in landscaping? So that being said, then it can start to become a little more complex. And that's where we might want tree board members to explain anything, because I think we've had some questions when we talked about this prior.
Okay, so just so we're clear, there's part of this that's highlighted. And I'm taking it, those are the highlighted portions are what has been changed without
Correct.
comparing the two. So it's basically one that's got no highlights on it would be the old version. And then
That is the current version that it is in code currently.
Okay.
You got the old version.
And they should be watermarked for ease of.
During the process, there were a series of changes, and as noted in the last meeting, it became kind of difficult to wade through all that. So we decided the best thing at this point, as we understand it, this is the recommendation from the tree board. So we gave you the current and then the highlighted version that is recommended. And those changes are indicated.
And I do have those available to bring up on the screen if you all want to look at anything in particular. Just let me know.
So
there was one section that I had a little concern about, and maybe I don't understand it. but it's 13-205, the second paragraph, where it says the tree board shall have the authority to advise on and participate in the development of guidelines for landscaping and care of trees and shrubs in private developments. I'm not sure that a private development necessarily would want the tree board, so I'm not sure if this is overbroad or not. But I don't know what how this came about.
Maybe we should have somebody from the tree board speak to that.
Would you like me to bring-
Yeah,
tell
my
me if you'd like me to bring them
assumption,
in.
I'd like that. My assumption, Charlie, is when the planning commission is looking at developments, the planning commission can stipulate some things. And I think the tree board input at that point would be a good idea.
Yeah.
I will need both their names and addresses for the record.
Andrew, just say your name. Andrew Hodgson, just say your name and address.
Yeah, Andrew Hodgson, 103 Mountain Court.
And Mr. Joe, you're still muted. You're muted, Joe.
There we go. Joe Horton, 502 James Boulevard.
Gentlemen,
Okay, we were just discussing the section 13-205, where it says the tree board shall have the authority to advise on and participate in the development of guidelines for landscaping and care of trees and shrubs in private developments. That seems to be a little much when you're talking about private developments. I think, Dan, if the planning commission wanted the tree board to have some authority or some input, it might be good for them to be able to say the tree board has to participate in this, but this goes beyond that. This is beyond, a body saying, hey, tree board, I want you involved. This is basically saying the tree board is involved.
If I may, this was language that, and it's not appearing in the highlighted version you're showing, but in, I think, the red line that I had circulated back in October after the first council meeting. This is language that was actually in the existing ordinance, and it's in 13-204. And when we were reviewing this ordinance, the tree board just thought that this language, and I think also after comment at the last council meeting, that this was language that should be moved to 13-205 just for clarity within the headings.
Well, the 13-204 talks about public areas. This extends that to private developments, so it's different.
Again, it's language that's in the existing ordinance, and we merely moved it to a section that we thought made more sense based on the headings. Again, I think it's in terms of whether or not the language should be removed going forward is a matter for the council, but I think this was language that was agreed to in 2010, and it's just merely that the board has the authority to advise on and participate, but I don't think it extends to actually give any sort of voting power with respect to private developments. At the council meeting last fall, we had discussed the idea that it's a good idea in certain instances that if private developments are going to, big private developments are going to come around, that it would be a good idea if the tree board has the ability, at least in the ordinance, to advise if asked.
Yeah, I don't see that in 204, the old version. It still talks about public areas, not private, unless I'm just missing something.
So I'm looking at, I have the highlighted version that was in the agenda packet, but I'm also looking at the version that I circulated in October, which is a red line to the comments from May of 2020. And in my red line, it's appearing in green ink, which in my redlining software indicates that that's language that was already in there, but it's just been moved.
Okay, well, all right, if you have the packet on a PDF, it's page 42, 13-204, it's the current version. It says, I don't read it unless I'm just missing it. It says the tree board shall develop guidelines for the care of all trees and shrubs located within street rights of way, parks, and municipal code. Reference tree board, I don't know, that doesn't really make any sense, but public places of the town. It seems like that's just public places. That's 204.
Yeah.
And that should read "and public places of the town." That was, there was a formatting issue moving this from the existing code to a format which I could work from to include it in with a watermark and everything that we did tonight. So
Okay.
you can ignore the municipal code reference. I apologize for that.
Okay, yeah, I get it. That's fine. So anyway, I don't think that the authority to give guidance in private developments is in the original code.
Andrew Hodgson, any way you can follow that link back in your red line doc?
Well, I'm trying to look at it myself. I'm just having technical difficulties with all the screens open. It's kind of logging up my computer.
I'm on the planning commission and I'm all for the tree board and their guidance, but this seems to me to be a little overbroad.
It's kind of the same, what Jack Cruzy's development in the back of Fox Run, he made mention, or was it Ann Hagen that called in and talked about that? It sort of sounded like they had an arrangement that was like that seemed like it worked pretty well. I mean, I'm not saying that's one example, but is that the kind of scenario we're talking about here?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Troy, but our planning commission and our current land use plan does call out canopy and things of that sort. It's not as if the planning commission wouldn't be working to preserve trees as they assess new developments.
I don't disagree with that. Like I said,
Okay.
I'm all for the tree board. It just, the way this is written, they don't need the planning commission to suggest that they should be involved.
Yeah.
They are involved.
Yeah.
And that might be a little overbroad, in my opinion.
But this is not mandating. It really does just say that they have the authority to advise.
Well, and participate in the development of guidelines for landscaping. So basically, they can go to the developer and say, I know you want to have this landscaping, but we don't agree. We want it different. And that might be a little too much.
That's not saying that's not giving them that authority. It's just saying to advise and participate in guidelines and to participate in the development of guidelines. They have the authority to participate, but doesn't say that they get to set them.
We'd like a seat at the table, basically, just to give us what they're planning and give them some guidelines. They have to take them. It's just some strong suggestions.
So it's not a mandatory, it's not like that they would have to consult.
Everything
A developer would have to consult with the tree board about what their plans are in terms of canopy. It's just an option that's available to them.
Correct.
I don't think that language sounds like it's a mandatory scenario. I think it just sounds like it's a resource.
I think it could be worded better.
Resource is a good word.
Do you think authority sounds like too strong of a word, and maybe something like, something less strong?
Would it
I mean-
would it work if it said that the tree board shall have the capacity to, or the tree board will be available to advise rather than have the authority to?
What about shall serve as a resource to advise on and participate in?
Well, I think that's, that may take it a little too far the other way.
Okay.
Where they can say, okay, you're a resource. We don't need you. We're going to do our own thing. Maybe, what if we change the word development to discussion, so that they have the authority to advise on and participate in the discussion of guidelines for landscaping. At least they have a seat at the table, but the landscaper doesn't necessarily have to abide by their recommendations, but they do have a seat at the table.
Joe, what does that change in your mind?
Well, I'd really like to discuss all these changes with the rest of the board to get more input. I mean, we laid out, we took off stuff that was already there, and then we had some discussion at the last board meeting, and then we made other changes. So, you know, these were not brought up at the last meeting.
Yeah, you guys haven't had this subsequent meeting where you get to go over this document. Why are we doing this tonight?
We had our initial recommendations in May, and then I think we met with a discussion meeting before the council in September, thereabout. It was a special meeting to discuss our ordinance changes. And from that council meeting, the tree board then met and revised the ordinance. And then what you're looking at now is that revision that came from the September special meeting with the council.
Which is now we have a new council. So, you know, with some new members, so other things are coming up.
So anyway, that's my thought about that. That really jumped out at me when I was reading that. And again, I'm on the planning commission. I want the tree board to be involved in things, but I also don't know that the tree board should prevent a developer from doing a certain type of landscaping. I think that the tree board should be involved in the discussions, and can help a landscaper, especially those who are like, you know, Jack Cruzy's a good example, somebody who's open to ideas and wants to make this place, a great outdoor community. Then, you know, that's gonna really work well.
Well, the line says the tree board shall have the authority to advise. I mean, it doesn't, we're not setting the guideline. We have the authority to advise him or them.
It doesn't say to prevent them from doing something, like you said, Charlie.
Well, I don't know, Harry, how do you read that? Am I just looking at it wrong?
No, Charlie, I think I look at it a little bit like you do, that I think arguably it gives the tree board more power than is intended. And I've been trying to figure something. The tree board shall have the authority to advise on and discuss guidelines for landscaping. I mean, and participate is what troubles me a little bit.
May I ask a question?
Another one?
Yes. Are our two attorneys on the board, I'm assuming, I don't know if anybody, well, no, three, assuming that this is talking about specific development of guidelines for a specific developer, or development of guidelines for landscaping and care of shrubs in developments, which is the way I read it, so to participate in working with the planning commission. That's different. And if I'm looking at it correctly, we can clarify
I read
that.
this as like, developer A comes here and says, I want to put 30 houses on this plot of land. And then the tree board can just step in and say, okay, well, let's go meet. We're going to help you develop your guidelines. And that might be a little bit too much, but I think that the tree board should have, this has come up before in planning commission. I think the tree board should have a seat at the table to talk about what they're doing. I'm just not sure that it just read a little bit stronger than that to me. So, sometimes it's just the way it reads and, can be interpreted. We've seen, many things can be interpreted more than one way.
What if you said make recommendations rather than participate?
Well, and I think my question needs to be answered.
Can you say it again? Because I didn't hear the end of it. I don't have a good internet connection.
Is guidelines, participate in the development of guidelines for landscaping and care of trees and shrubs in private developments, talking about guidelines for developments or guidelines for a developer? And I guess
I'm
Joe and
sort of with Charlie. I think development of guidelines for landscaping in private developments could be construed to mean in a private development, they would have the authority to advise and participate in the guidelines.
So Joe and Andrew, what do you think the intent was?
I don't think the intent was that we have the final say in anything with respect to private developments. Obviously, this is a public landscaping ordinance that we're discussing. But I think the goal is to have one, we would like to have, like Joe said, a seat at the table. But at the same time, if we don't have language that at least provides that in this ordinance, then there's a question of whether or not there's any enabling language to give us that right to sit at the table to begin with. And I don't think it came up in September as well, that we want to be called and involved in every single individual private development. But because the canopy of the town is such a big concern and needs to be protected long-term, that the tree board should at least have some say as well. Because while we have control over public land, private land is obviously the majority, and the tree board should at least be able to give their expertise on that.
Right. I think that I don't think I disagree with what you're saying. I think we are on the same page. I think this language might just be poorly written to accomplish that goal. I think if you just replace the word development with discussion, it gives you a seat at the table to talk with the developer about what they're doing. But the developer is not required, I guess, to accept your guidelines. But I think that hopefully most, if not all, developers would welcome your input and, want to build something that fits with our community and promotes the type of community, that we have with the canopy and everything else. So that's just I just think it's not written. It's not great wording.
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the entire board, but I don't think we're beholden to this and participate language. That's the language that, we all agreed upon at the last meeting after getting input from the council then. Just as some further example, I think the idea here is more of just, if there's going to be a large scale private development, the trees that get planted there that are going to be there for decades, long term, that we want to have a focus on native species as opposed to non-native species, and we want to have a focus on diversity of species as opposed to an entire orchard of a specific species. That was the gist.
Yeah. No, I want the tree board to have a seat at that table. I'm with Joe. So,
Charlie, can I just ask if, in listening to this and the timing of when the input and all needs to be made, can I just ask if this accomplishes what you need, but also what the tree board is trying? If we changed it to say, the tree board shall have the authority to provide input during the development of guidelines, and the rest of it remains the same. That changes I think the feel of what authority they have, but it also ensures that input comes while the developers developing the guidelines.
I mean, that works too. And Dan, I think I'm not sure I can address your question. I see what you're saying, but I don't think we have guidelines for general private developments, do we?
The planning commission can put stipulations.
No, I'm saying just as a general nature, like if a private development comes before the planning commission, that would be a different way of reading it from if we're developing just general guidelines. Like we have the land use plan, and if we wanted to put something in the land use plan that said private development should adhere to these guidelines, that would be one of the ways that you're reading it. And then if developer A comes to the planning commission and says, I want to develop it this way, that would be another way of reading that language. So, but I don't know the land use plan well enough to know if there's a general recommendation on landscaping generally for private developments. I read it as an individual private development. For any individual private development that comes before comes around, then they have the authority to advise on landscaping for that development.
Right, which just means they have the ability to have a seat at the table to talk about it, but not to mandate.
Yeah, I just felt like the language was a little strong, and I think that the way Boyd suggested or the way I suggested, some way it just needs to be softened a little bit.
Can you put the word kinda in there?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, that's a bad word for me to use. But so let's, I mean, I don't know what we're supposed to be doing. It's for discussion. This is my discussion point. Somebody else may have some other ideas to discuss, but at some point, something's going to be put together for us to vote on. So I would like for that sentence to be reworded a little bit so that it gives the tree board the right to have a seat at the table or the authority to sit at the table and to talk with lands or private developers about what they're doing in their development.
Well, can we move on from this? Andrew's already said, and Joe, I don't think you disagree with him, that you guys aren't wedded to this specific language.
Yeah, we can move on. Yeah, good idea.
Can I
You
just
guys-
ask another question before we lose them? Just educational for me.
Okay.
I noticed one of the changes is kind of changing standards from either state or kind of federal ones to International Society of Arboricultural. I can't pronounce it right. Is there a reason for that, or is it just like getting on a consistent standard across the whole ordinance?
Just a consistency point, that's all.
Okay, there are other areas for discussion. I might have another area, but are there others that anybody else has?
What does all lawful authority, I guess you can't say what that entails in its entirety, but is that a legal term of art? Just saying that whatever the state law allows, you can do?
Yeah, I'll answer that. That's a specific change that I added. My thought here was I didn't want to get in a situation where we say that our only abilities are whatever is specifically enumerated in this ordinance. And so therefore, to the extent there is something else lawful that we may have the right, that we have that through this catch-all sentence at the end there.
What section is that?
At the end of the 205.
And again, it's all lawful authority to act in furtherance of its duties and responsibilities.
Comfortable with that?
I think that to me gives further reasoning. We do need to change some of the, since that's in duties and responsibilities language around authority to advise and participate. Since it's specifically, well, yeah, referencing duties and responsibilities.
I also had a question about 13-211. And this is not a major problem. It made me think of a tree board member that's going rogue. So I think before the town manager, it's the second paragraph, had to have the recommendation of the tree board, and it's been changed to just a member of the tree board. What was the reason for that change?
Like someone's not available. Doesn't have to be a specific person, it just be a member of the tree board.
There's an or in there also.
Yeah, my thought on it was that they don't want to have to call a meeting of the tree board over something specific that's maybe even really small that Boyd needs to handle.
Well,
You can just talk to a member of the board.
yeah,
rather than-
I think this really just gives me that ability that I have the discretion to do what I need to do. But I can also, as we often do, just contact Joe and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Right.
Well, no, it doesn't give you,
And we
it
can get an
requires
offer.
you. Boyd, it doesn't allow you to call Joe. It requires you to call one of them.
Well, it does say or upon.
yeah.
Well, it says, okay. Well, that's not the change. The change that I was talking about was changing it from one member, I mean, from the board to one member. I don't, it's not a big deal. Just made me think of somebody going rogue saying, hey, let's shut this down. But,
Yeah, I mean,
I just wondered why that was changed from the board decision to one member.
Again, it was to keep from having, it doesn't require me to consult. But if I do consult, we don't have to get a whole board meeting together to do that. I can reach out to Andrew or Joe or whoever's available and discuss it with them or ask them to take a look at it. Or if need be, we can get an arborist to look at it. So it just provides kind of, as we said before, the ability, there are assets that I can draw on to get advice before I do something.
I have a question. So what you're saying is that this is really written so that you, Boyd, can reach out to somebody on the tree board to ask a question rather than them to call you and say, hey, I want this to be done this way. So it really, I don't know how.
or Boyd to be like, hey, I've got a question. We need to have a full meeting of the whole board.
Yeah, so I don't see Boyd going rogue. That's what I'm saying.
No, I wasn't talking about Boyd. I was talking about a member of the tree board.
I don't see Boyd going rogue. But if he's the one asking, then that would make sense to me that whoever he asks, they'll give input, but there won't be the possibility of that. That's my thinking.
Yeah, it isn't really that Boyd is required to ask it for anybody's permission. It's
Right.
that Andrew could tell Boyd this tree has to come down, right? It says, or upon recommendation by a member of the board, shall remove or cause or order to be removed. So if Andrew goes to Boyd and says, take that tree down, that tree comes down. It has to come down. Because it says the town manager at his own or her discretion, or upon recommendation by a member of the tree board, or this other thing, shall remove or cause or order to be removed any tree or part thereof, etc. So if Andrew says, take it down, it comes down. Not picking on you, Andrew. Let's pick on somebody else who's not here to defend themselves.
So, but are you missing by going that deep into that and then, starting making that be your diving board, the fact that this whole section 13-211 is blah, 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 ensure public safety and general welfare and to achieve goals of the following guidelines in the town's land use plan? Because all of this is talking about if there's an issue. It's not a rogue board member going, kill that tree.
Well, that's what it made me. That's what, I mean, like certain things just jump out at me. That's what jumped out at me. When I saw that, I thought, okay, one board member can just decide, I don't like that tree. I'm taking it down. It comes down. I don't think that tree board members would generally act that way, but that just jumped out at me as being a little odd that one person can require something to be taken down. It isn't that Boyd has to convene a meeting of the tree board, because this isn't Boyd having to get advice from the tree board whether to take a tree down. This is the tree board. Before it was, if the tree board met and said that tree should come down, that tree has to come down. Now it is one person on the tree board can say that tree has to come down and it has to come down. That's
so
just,
the bottom. Yeah, the bottom highlighted line in that section says, notwithstanding the foregoing, a member of the tree board and the town manager shall consult with an ISA certified arborist or a professional forester for a recommendation before removing any other tree on town property. So that covers that.
Well, I don't know what the word other tree means.
I think what the first part, if I might, I think the first part is referring to trees in the public right of way, whereas the last part would refer to any other tree that's not, it is on public property, but it's not in the public right of way.
And the whole section's about unsafe trees.
Yeah, my thought is that the first half of that second paragraph is entirely related to unsafe trees within public rights of way. And that last sentence is just if there's any other tree on town property in the middle of a park.
Right. I get that. I'm just saying it seemed odd to me that we were just allowing one person to make that decision rather than the tree board. I wasn't sure why we wanted to have one person be able to make that decision rather than the board. I get that we're talking about trees that might be a problem, but again, that might be just one person's opinion as to whether it's a problem that isn't shared by everybody. I'm not saying that would be the case, but it could be the case.
Boyd would have options then.
No, he has no option. If I'll pick on Ann, she's not here. If Ann goes to Boyd and said, that tree has to come down, there's no option. It comes down.
I don't read it that way.
I don't need.
I don't think there's another way to read it. That's how it's written. It gives these different possibilities, but one outcome. It could be Boyd decides it has to come down. It could be a member of the tree board. It could be.
I think I agree with that potentially dangerous reading.
It says at his or her discretion.
Yeah, that, well.
But that could be the
town manager
person.
has it.
No, it says the town manager at his or her discretion.
Mhm.
Or,
Or,
I mean,
and then, so what I'm just saying is, does this even need to be said? Like, of course, Boyd can go ask the opinion of Andrew
Sure.
on
Andrew,
whether he should take this tree down. He does, and if we say it here, we just are potentially giving this weird power that someone in the future could abuse, that we wouldn't want.
Could,
This
if I
is
may,
what we
could we
lawyers
just-
do, people. We narrow down to the minutia. All right.
Can we just rearrange that a little bit? It starts out the town manager at his or her discretion. Okay, so then that or is stricken. Okay. Now let's take that first part away for a minute and start it with by a member, and in parentheses put an S, of the tree board or after consultation with a professional forester, at his or her discretion, or upon recommendation by the director of the public works, then say the town manager at his or her discretion shall or may. So we look at all these different situations, then say the town manager at his or her discretion shall remove or cause. Then that's putting the town manager's discretion where it needs to be. And then it's not dependent. It's not lost.
I'd like to know if that groks with Joe and Andrew.
Well, again, we can, we're gonna have a tree board meeting this Thursday. And all these changes that we made them from the last council meeting, I thought had already been read and we would be able to discuss them, which we are now, and then we can go back and make other changes.
Yeah, I just want to make one more comment about that. I kind of think that the idea here should be that we would limit the town manager's discretion and I guess require the town manager to have a recommendation of the tree, a member of the tree board, or consultation with the forester or the ISA arborist. I mean, it seems like, that might have been desirable to say the town manager just can't go take down a tree. The town manager needs to consult with these people before being allowed to go take down that tree.
Well, that was the idea.
Yeah, that didn't come out in that.
Yeah, but this is again, we're talking about in that section, that part of it. I forget what the terminology was, but something that's a danger or something of that sort. This isn't just like willy-nilly.
No, I agree, but I mean, I don't know what tree's dangerous. I'm sure Andrew and Joe could look at a tree and say, yeah, that's a danger, but I would say, it looks good to me. So anyway, I think that the idea here was to just make sure that if the town manager wanted to take down a tree, that he or she had consulted with somebody of authority or who knew what they were talking about, maybe more. I don't know. I don't want to denigrate you.
kind of, I mean,
You may
they-
know all about it.
The language also puts into perspective what the criteria is for a dangerous tree. So it's not like, somebody could just go, I want to go take that tree down because I don't like it.
No, I agree.
I mean, it puts in context what the nature of necessary removal would be.
Well, to ensure public safety and general welfare.
Yeah.
All right, I think if y'all are going to go back and discuss this, I would discuss that section and decide what it is you're actually wanting to do here. And if and I'm not trying to take power away from the town manager to be able to make a decision to take down a tree that's a public hazard. But I don't think that this, as written, achieves the intent that you may have had.
Okay.
As I recall, those were really the only two things that jumped out at me when I read it. But if anybody's got any other things to talk about, let's do that now.
May I mention one thing, Tara, please?
Sure.
Sorry, Mayor. 13209, there was a change. I believe the original actually had a greater distance that says no street tree or shrub shall be planted within 3 lateral feet of any fire plug. I believe the old one was even further than that. But also added to this section is this section shall not apply to any tree or shrubs existing as of June 1st, 2020. My concern is adding that sentence in that if that would imply that if there are shrubs all around the fire hydrant and it's not accessible, then they would be grandfathered and we couldn't do anything about it, would be my concern.
Yeah, I forgot to bring that up a couple weeks ago when we had this. I did ask a fireman. I said, "Hey, I just took a picture of that language and texted it. I said, hey, could this potentially be a problem for access?" Like, probably not, but potentially. So but potentially when you got a fire is kind of not okay.
We have literally taken loppers and had to remove roaches from right around fire hydrants before. So it does happen.
Well, it's also a concern for street corners too. I mean, you have a bush that grows up really big near a street corner. You can't see when you look to your right. You might pull out in front of somebody that can be very dangerous. So
I'm told that they originally had 10 feet, Joe and Andrew, but there was some consultation with the fire chief and said 3 feet was fine.
Yeah,
That's
3
my
feet
understanding.
3 feet is fine. I'm not questioning that. That's actually code is 3 feet. That's fine. It's just that last sentence that grandfathers in anything that's existing as of 2020, that would mean we wouldn't be able to deal with those situations. If they exist. That's the only question, not the distance.
The firemen, this is just like a dumb question probably, but I mean, like, do they go around and inspect the fire hydrants and make sure that they're not obscured by overgrowth and things like that?
They do.
Prevent that kind of thing from happening?
They do, but people consider their yard to go to the curb or the asphalt, and folks are landscaping all of the time. And if they have a fire hydrant in their yard and they don't particularly like the looks of it, they may very well plant things to obscure it, but also hinders access to it. So it could happen at any time.
They just tell them
And
remove.
there are many hundreds of fire hydrants, so I would venture to guess there are some out there that are problematic that we haven't caught yet. But they do periodically do flushing and all of that. So as they identify these issues, they request that the property owners address it, and if not, if necessary, we do. But this just, if there is an existing situation that needs to be addressed, this would kind of grandfather it in, and they would have an argument that it existed as of June 1st, 2020, so I don't have to move it.
Joe, can you speak as to why the 2020 is in there?
I think that just brought in the whole ordinance that we were trying to get, but we can take that out because I agree. I mean, If it's a hazard to the or the firemen getting what they need to get done, then it needs to move.
Yeah.
Well, didn't we go, it went from 5 feet to 3 feet, so there would be no pre-existing tree planted closer than 5 feet, so we wouldn't need that section or that
No,
last sentence.
but that's what Boyd's saying there is in practicality.
No, I'm saying, but that we're, so what I'm saying is before it was 5 feet, so now it's 3 feet. So no one should have been planting anything closer than 5 feet. And if they did, they were in violation of the prior law. So we don't really need that last sentence because this is allowing them to plant closer to the fire hydrant than they could before.
Yeah, well, I think we can move on. Joe said they can address that. And we're going to be, if we can hit some of these to help them, that would be helpful.
I would take that last sentence out. Yeah, we can move on. Any other comments, questions? Okay. I don't want to keep you guys here any longer. There could be other things that come up that we'll discuss again, but at least you have some ideas of some things to talk about at your next meeting. And Andrew and Joe, very much appreciate you guys coming by and helping us out in reading over this.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're
Thank
meeting
you.
on Thursday, so hopefully we can get this finalized shortly.
Okay, excellent.
If anybody comes across anything else in the meantime, if you have a chance to look at it again, if anything else jumps out at you, if you'll send that to Samurai, we'll make sure and forward it on to them ahead of Thursday.
Could I just mention too, just in case it needs to be addressed, 13.222, the very last section is titled grandfathering. Does include the section we just discussed as well as a couple others. I don't know if that may need to be, that's up to you guys. I just wanted to make sure y'all are aware of it.
Yeah. So Sam, and thing like if you go to the prior section, which that's referring back up to, there's a place in there where it mentions the town commissioners, and we don't have commissioners anymore. The tree board, does the tree board need to be concerning themselves with that kind of stuff, or is that the kind of language we might clean up?
I think we can do that once we get the final draft in regards to the kind of things that we've been discussing. Then we'll do a final review and do all of those updates.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. And thank you, Andrew and Joe, for helping us out tonight. And we look forward to hearing from you further.
You're welcome.
See you
Thank
Thursday.
All right.
Thank you.
I want to move to this last discussion item. We don't have to spend a ton of time tonight, but I do want to keep it on the radar. Overflow parking in Rainbow Lake. And I'll tell you why this came up. And Dan and Susanna probably already know, there's some folks on James Boulevard who are very concerned about what's going on with Rainbow Lake and the excess parking and what it's doing to this area. And they've come before the town council before. They've talked to Boyd. They want to try to find a solution to this problem. And what's happening is, and it happened badly this past summer, 2020, during COVID, it seemed like everybody wanted to go to Rainbow Lake, maybe more so than ever before. And we don't have a lot of parking for Rainbow Lake. And they were parking all up and down, I think it's Ohio, right in front of Andrew's parents' house. And we had to put some temporary barricades there to keep people from parking. And so what that did is it pushed them up to James Boulevard, where it's been newly paved and it's pretty wide. That seems like a reasonable place for people to park because there's plenty of space on the side of the road as opposed to a lot of the other roads in Old Town. But these people are, I shouldn't say these people, that doesn't sound good. The people that are coming up here to go to Rainbow Lake are they're parking too close to people's driveways. People can't get out of their driveway. They're blocking fire hydrants, which is a huge problem. And so they're just trying to squeeze in as best they can so they can go down there. And one person mentioned that a consequence of this is that Rainbow Lake is kind of being trashed. The trails are kind of being trashed by all the traffic and stuff. So I don't know, a great way to solve this problem, but one of the things that we can do is try to restrict the amount of parking on James Boulevard, which would then hopefully, if it's enforced with ticketing and things like that, hopefully restrict the amount of people that are using that park, or at least parking to use that park. It might push people to other streets around Old Town, which means that you'd have to have some restrictions on parking in other streets around Old Town. But, at some point, like I told Boyd this, at some point people are gonna, they're not gonna want to walk a mile to get to Rainbow Lake to go hiking. They're gonna decide, I'll just come back another day, or maybe I'll come tomorrow and get here earlier where I can get a spot to park. So I would like to address this problem. It is going to be a problem this summer and as the weather gets nice. And I think we need to do it. And Boyd mentioned that we might be able to do it by some signage. We can try that as a start. Some signs posted saying, no parking to corner, maybe paint the curbs if people don't care about that, or something like that. Just wanted to throw it out there and see if we can solve this problem before it comes up again.
Have we heard from anyone at Alexian about whether or not, overflow parking is a problem for them at their entrances? I mean, I'm sure we have.
They do have problems periodically.
Yeah, I would think, I've noticed that myself when I'm on my walking route that, that's an issue.
Yeah, and maybe we need to have Loretta here to talk about what can be done.
She is in the waiting room if you'd like to have her join the conversation, as is the police chief.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's have them both join.
And we have looked at this and had a good bit of discussion. And, one of the things that initially during these discussions with council came really right after James Boulevard was redone, and the prospect of painting those brand new curbs with yellow paint and stenciling was met with some hesitation. And we've really looked at other options, and there's just really not a lot other than signage or legal markings, which the concern would be the residents. And I think the concerns are certainly legitimate, but as far as those that have contacted me, we've heard from 2 residents in that area, and there are quite a many more of that. And I wouldn't want to do something to address concerns that ends up causing problems for the other residents. So I think we have to be careful how we approach it. And that's what we've been doing, trying to figure out a way to do it without putting bright yellow paint and a bunch of signs up and all that. And there aren't a whole lot of options.
Yeah, Matt, may I add something to the conversation?
Sure.
Having lived over there and hiked that trail many times and seen too many cars there and called the police and just all of that, I think there are solutions to it, but some of, there are enforcement issues, but Mike can't go out and enforce something that isn't law. So there are ways you can have, and we could talk at another meeting about any of these more extensively, but you can have parking by permit only, residential parking only. No access to the trail. When you go down to Coolidge Park, if the parking lot is full, they tell you it's full. When you can have an area that has a capacity. When the parking lot is full at Rainbow Lake, you can deem the park at capacity. Now that still requires you to have a police officer saying there's no more access to this, if that's what you're going to do, but you'd have to decide to put up a bunch of signs. The signs were put up and it stopped the parking on Ohio. And I think, Mike, you guys did even do some towing, didn't you? Did you guys actually end up needing to tow some people and you were ticketing people in Ohio last year? You're muted still, Mike. We're not hearing you, Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
No?
He's actually not, but his mic's not working.
Mike's not working. Nope, it's not working.
I know, while he's trying to figure that out, I know they have been issuing citations on parking in front of hydrants and all of that, and been giving a lot of warnings for parking that is problematic, but not as dangerous as, so there's trying to address it appropriately.
I noticed a couple of weeks ago there was some no parking between these signs.
Mhm.
That, the two folks that have complained, registered concerns, live side by side, and we provided those signs for them so that they could put them out and their driveways wouldn't be blocked. And that has helped that situation.
That seems like a
I
temporary.
haven't gotten any other complaints from the other residents.
Yeah, that seems like a temporary solution,
Sure.
though. I mean, you don't want these signs sitting out there like this, barricades.
Right.
I think, and Dan, yeah, yeah, there we go. Chief Williams, you're gonna get feedback, I think, from the phone. All right, anyway. I would be hesitant. I used to live in Chicago where they had permit parking for streets because nobody has a garage. Everybody has to park on the street. And then when people come to visit, there's no place to park. And you have to have, some permits that you can give your guests when they want to come and stay. And it's not something we want to go to if we can help it. I think we can start small with maybe restricting some parking somehow with, no parking to corner signs. That would, narrow the number of spaces available, and enforcement by Chief Williams and the police department. And then if it remains a problem, if people are being pushed to other streets, maybe we can put signs there, or we can address what's happening and how to prevent that. But at some point, like I said before, there's going to be no available parking and people aren't going to want to walk forever to get to the trail. And so they'll just come back another day. If you just said only the number of people that park there can go to the trail, well, that prevents me from going to the trail, and I live 3 blocks away.
Well, but it doesn't. And so just as a general concept, and I'll probably get, I know this will be seen as restrictive, but one of the reasons we moved here was for Lake and for Signal Point and those kinds of places. These are neighborhood parks. These are neighborhood parks, and you can walk. And I live over on Kentucky now, and I can walk to those places and would walk to those places because they're awesome on the weekend. So it doesn't restrict people walking to the parks. It doesn't restrict residents. And if you're talking about putting on those signs and moving them out and moving people away farther and farther away, you've still put out all the signs. If you change the signage and that it's residential parking only, no access to Rainbow Lake, and as you get closer, it's a complex thing. Then there's another option is paid parking. If you add some specific paid parking somewhere, but with money going specifically for trail maintenance, that particular trail right now, the switchback on the way down is almost washed out and needs help. We need to
I mean, it's getting heavy usage. Because of all these people.
That idea, Dad. I mean, I would be good with that, with some paid parking.
Well, I mean, yeah, the only problem with that is that I don't want to pay, if I lived if I lived on James Boulevard and had friends come over and they had to park on the street, I wouldn't want them to have to pay to park.
Well, that's why you
I'm
have
not a huge fan of parking meters.
I know, but we're going to have to think out of the box. It's what's the Yogi Berra
So-
statement? Nobody goes there anymore. It's too popular, and that's what we're dealing with.
The land of the current small parking lot, is that town land or state land?
Town,
Okay, and directly below that, is that town land or state land?
it's town land. There actually is an area of private land well below the current parking lot, and we have tried, I think we could get access to that, but it all evolves around some view shed right privileges, and that was complicated by the Cumberland Trail easement that we found out actually didn't coincide with where the Cumberland Trail is. So we've been working through that with the state, but when COVID hit, their offices closed down and that kind of came to a halt. But there is the potential for additional parking space below where the current lot is.
Well, that's
The other side of that is that if we put in more parking, there's more use.
Yeah.
And could further exacerbate the problem
Yeah.
we're seeing on the trail.
And I don't think residents of Signal Mountain want to pay to procure land.
Well, I would not, I would suggest that this problem originates from a state. I don't think the residents should pay for it. I think if we could get money from the state for their access to their state forest for this, yes, it will be built on our land. That would be the way that we should try to go about it if we were going to do that.
Well, we brought in Loretta and Chief Williams. I'll first start with Loretta. Do you have you thought about like any possible solutions or ways to deal with the issue?
It's pretty much the same everybody's been talking about. The issue on James Boulevard is if you put no parking up there, the residents that live there can't park there either. And it's hard to distinguish who's a local person and who's not, and who's visiting somebody that lives on James Boulevard. So it's not fair to those residents to put the no parking in there, in my opinion. So I don't know how to distinguish between the people that are living there and their family, and then people that are from out of town that want to visit. So James Boulevard, the other streets, we've been able to put the no parking. We've done some signs, and we've done some stenciling, and that's worked out well. But James Boulevard is a problem, and I just don't know how to solve that.
So, one way to do it is if you're going to put a no parking sign to say no parking from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends. That way, if somebody wants to park there during the week, there's no restrictions because, there's not a problem during the week. It's really just a problem on the weekends. But I think just a first start would be to try to restrict the available spaces to park on the newly paved portion of James Boulevard and see what happens and see where they go. And if they go to another street that's narrow and there's not a lot of parking available, then we can address that with some no parking on the weekend signs and just kind of see where it goes. Like I said, start small.
And you could restrict those spaces by saying no parking here to the corner.
Right.
What I'm concerned about is then they're going to park between there, which is where the driveways are to the local residents. And that's, I think, the biggest problem on James is they're parking right in front of the residents' homes, and it's hard for them to get in and out.
Am I getting out now?
You're on.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry about, we just got this figured out, I think, for the audio, but we pay particular attention on the weekends to those areas where the fire hydrants are, and especially the driveways and even their mailboxes, so that we've written a ton of citations over there. And as Dan asked earlier, we even towed a few cars over on Ohio earlier in the early part of the pandemic. But it's just the overflow, as you all know, is we move them from one place and they just go somewhere else. And it's frustrating for the officers, but once it gets full and the people leave their cars there, they may not be back for 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes. So it's difficult to deal with them. And they pay their parking citation, and I guess they look at it as a parking fee for the day. And
Good point. Well, I mean, I don't really, I mean, I live in the area. I wouldn't care if there's yellow paint on the curb, but I mean, do people not like that?
I don't
Anybody?
know if that's how enforceable that is. And then again, you wouldn't want those residents, if they're having friends over, if their car is parked there out front of their house, they have to abide by the same rule. They may get ticketed for just visiting their friend.
Well, no, when you're talking about yellow paint on the curb or no parking to corner, you're just talking about restricting the spaces available.
Oh, right,
If you have a
right,
friend over,
right.
they can still park on the street.
Yeah.
They just can't park within a certain area of your driveway. Is it a law, Chief Williams? I mean, if you see somebody parked, a foot away from somebody's driveway, is that ticketable, or does there have to be something preventing that or telling them they can't do that?
it would have to be something where they're blocking usage either of the driveway or of the fire hydrant. And I'm not real sure we can even do it just for blocking a driveway, other than to try to find the owner and make them move or tow it, or actually those would be the options as far as that I can think of right off.
Yeah, Mike or Boyd, does Lookout Mountain not solve this problem by city stickers?
Yeah.
I know they have
They
them.
used to have those. I don't know if they still do or not, but I know they
mean,
did at one point.
You could have city stickers free for residents. They cost nothing to get printed.
But there again, when you, like Loretta was talking about, when they have friends over or family, then
You
they're
have
going to get,
passes.
they're going to get, we can do that, but they're going to get cited and get upset for getting a ticket.
Right. But are you more upset because your street is blocked with people who are changing their clothes in your front yard and being on the curb, or that you have to give your visitors some passes so they can park? We're trying to solve a problem that's not an easy one to solve.
True.
And so the other side of that is capacity. I think you've either got to, I think the best options are city stickers and limit capacity.
Well, just as curiosity, because one of the guys that I talked to thought we should limit capacity on the trails because the trails are getting, I think you mentioned it too, they're getting overcrowded. But how do you do that?
Yeah, that was my question. How are you going to do that?
You have to have a park
Maybe we
ranger or
could hire a
something?
park ranger.
Well, no, it doesn't have to be a park ranger. You can work. I think we could be creative and think about some ways to do that. But if you're needing to tie up a couple of officers a lot on the weekends to take care of that place, you tie up an officer to say parks at capacity. That's exactly what they do at Coolidge Park. An officer stands there and says, nope, turn around. You can't come in here. Which isn't to say they don't go somewhere else and walk. You're still going to have that. But if you can't park on the streets in that whole area, unless you have a city sticker or a permit, they're going to, I mean, they're not going to, where are they going to park?
the
At
idea
Pritz
of
and walk all the way over?
I kind of like the idea of having somebody who's responsible for sort of oversight over there.
I think that should be local trail groups. It ought to be,
But I mean,
local
I also
citizens
like-
into that.
I also like the idea of somehow trying to have a way to raise money that could be designated for trail maintenance and for the maintenance of our park.
Right. And I think that's that's another phase. And that moves into what Boyd was talking about, that flag lot that's down there. If you moved into that phase, you might be able to fund that and help fund maintenance of the park through some paid parking down there.
Or I mean, what if we put meters at Coolidge Park that could help fund that? I mean, I'm sorry, at Rainbow Lake,
Like that.
it's getting late. I'm getting
Yeah.
fun.
So you could do it if you think about it like the way, think about the Ocoee Center up on the Ocoee, where the Olympics were held in that section. They don't have a lot of meters, but and most of the time there's no one there. There's a courtesy box. But on weekends, if you want to go up there and, and it's Six Flags over the Ocoee, there's somebody at the end of the lot who's making sure that you pay your courtesy box fee to go in and park. And that's the same kind of thing. So
There's a problem with that, in that if you have to pay to park in the lot, you're just going to go park on the street.
unless you can't park on the street because you have city stickers and you can't.
Yeah. Well,
And if you have, so that's what I'm getting at is I think
Yeah.
there's a way to solve this, and none of them are good solutions, and somebody's gonna be mad no matter what you do. But if you want to solve it, you got to make a hard decision.
Well,
Just-
and I just think with the, the uptick in use of our, I mean, there's Signal Mountain, like there's, I don't, how many houses are for sale up here right now? Like 4, like people are just, moving here. It's a very desirable place to be. It's only getting more popular. The situations like this are just going to be compounded more and more over time. And, I think it's kind of good to have this sort of creative solution, problem solving, even if it's, some things are unrealistic and some things aren't going to make everybody happy, but we need to think about these things.
the problem for the most part is not residents, though. The problem is
Right.
it's an influx of folks on the weekends.
Yes.
and it's if you look at license plates, it's probably not a lot of people that live here that are going over there and parking on James Boulevard.
Yeah, they're out of
Going
state.
up the mountain. Okay, well, we've talked about it for a while. There's a lot of ideas to think about, but what I think we should do is ask Loretta and Chief Williams and Boyd to kind of put their heads together and see, maybe it's painting curbs, maybe it's putting some no parking to corners signs, maybe it's city stickers, Old Town stickers, or maybe it's more signs around saying you just can't park here on the weekends. If y'all could come up with some workable ideas, to me, I think it'd be a good idea to start something small and see how that plays out, so that we're not all of a sudden having next week you can't park anywhere in Old Town unless you have a sticker, but maybe do something small to try to help solve the problem. But if y'all could get together over the next couple of weeks and maybe come back at that next meeting and we can talk about some ideas that you might have, would that be okay?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, you've heard all the things that we've talked about, from city stickers, meters, signs, painting. Nothing's off the table.
We want to get it resolved as much as anybody because we're the ones that are out there having to deal with the folks that are mad about the parking and mad about the citations. Either way we go, they're going to be upset, and that's fine too. We don't mind that. We just need to, I think, get a direction, and we'll do whatever the council pleasure.
And I'll just throw one more parting idea. We talked about a park ranger, but I mean, if you had somebody with a clicker, who said, no, there's enough people that have gone down in the park, you can't come here. That means that the person who just parked on James Boulevard is going to go get in their car and leave. So maybe on the weekends you have something like that where somebody is there from say 10 to 2, so they're just part-time. I mean, if somebody comes at 4 o'clock, probably the parking's kind of
Filled up.
yeah, so the hot hours between getting there at 10 and 2 or something, maybe we think about that too, just a part-time person that monitors the traffic down into the park. So that's another parting idea.
Can we even legally do that to restrict access to a state park?
It's a town park.
Our park.
Yeah, it's our park.
We can do
I mean, I
anything
think-
we want to. Just kidding.
Well, Prentice Cooper State Forest is right next to it.
Yeah, you go through town property to access or get to Prentice Cooper State Forest. But we also have the complication of there is a state park, a linear state park, which is the Cumberland Trail that runs through our property. So in effect, it could be construed that we are limiting access to that. So we would need to look at it.
Right. But there's Signal Point is the access to that, and that one can fill up also. And that can also be an area where, we don't have people parking in the funk's yard there, and so.
Yeah, they don't want that. Okay, well, let's talk about this at our next meeting again, so we can try to wrap things up. Thank you guys for coming, Loretta and Chief Williams.
Yes, sir.
We are at the manager's report. We've probably covered most of the manager's report, but if you got anything else, let's go there.
Just Just wanted, Mayor asked to give an update on Old Town Sidewalks, and we are in that same phase with that. The engineering is continuing. They are working on it. And then on Marion and Driver Field project, they are working over there, and as you saw on the agenda tonight, we just finalized the electrical piece of that. All that documentation's been forwarded to the state for approval, and I think that will come in short order. So it's moving along very well at this point. So I'll leave it at that, given the late hour.
Okay. Do we have any communications and reports from the council?
Could I just quickly give a update on the MAC? I've
Yeah.
got some draft minutes here from last month. So I thought I would mention to you all that there's some new officers that they selected. So Ryan Walker will continue to be the chair. Susan Robinson will be the vice chair, and Mary Margaret Sullivan, I think, who is new to the board, is going to be the secretary. Then Angie kind of gave some updates on some goals and things that were accomplished. The SMAPF has taken a proactive approach to building maintenance. There was an Eagle Scout, Maxwell Sewell, who installed a new trail complete with signs, a bench, a balance beam in the woods behind the MAC. The Grahams, which would be Dick and Cheryl, donated a new swing to be installed on the lawn. And the Signal Mountain Garden Club installed a pollinator garden, leaving a space for a pavilion to be built to use as an outdoor classroom and a stage. The kitchen renovation is underway with the removal of old cabinets and appliances. Let's see. The entire facility was being used before, the shutdown. And we had performances with Nightfall bands, Chattanooga Symphony quintets, and then the Southern Exposure soundtrack play was performed there. We've got teachers that are signing up. They're working on marketing and how to recruit more volunteers and more support staff and job descriptions. And then the election of the officers. So anyway, I just wanted to give you all that quick update. There's a lot of activity there, though, for sure, and lots of good things happening.
Vice Mayor, would you mind forwarding a copy of that to me for inclusion in the minutes?
I'll do it right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Any other communications and reports? Okay. Well, that takes us to be adjourned.
Tentative agenda.
Oh, tentative agenda, March 8th. Well,
I would just like an update, and I don't know if this has to be a water board meeting on the tanks that we've discussed in those tank contracts.
Yeah. I have some concerns about too much information, but I think an update would be good. But I think we do need to consider attorney-client privileges. So I'll leave that up to Harry when we have an update next time. He knows that anyway, but we don't need to pry too much at this point to get information that we might want to keep protected by attorney-client privilege. So if it's Harry and Boyd talking, it's not going to violate that. But when we start getting information, then we lose that privilege.
Oh, I believe we are allowed by sunshine law to be a part of those meetings. that are
Sorry?
private. When it is attorney, well, I guess it's active litigation, which is not what this is.
Yeah, Tennessee's pretty bad about the protection for attorney-client privilege. And I actually called, because we had that in our newly elected officials meeting where they were talking about that. I called the MTAS rep to ask her if there was any way we could have some protections when we talk about this stuff. She essentially told me no, but didn't get back to me. She was going to look into some things, but just for now, we can't I'll leave it up to Harry to make sure that we don't get too much information that he would want to keep protected. But yeah, we can put that on the next agenda. Okay, anything else?
As it stands now, I have for the agenda a draft ordinance for the changes to the rec league or the rec board membership. And then we'll be back with a recommendation for addressing parking in the Rainbow Lake area. Is there anything else that I didn't get noted? Okay.
I don't recall anything, but if, I guess we can just shoot you an email if something comes up.
Please.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
See you
y'all.
next time.
Good night.
Thank you.